Most nutrition advice fails working men because it is not built on how humans actually live. It is built on ideal conditions. Flexible schedules, low physical stress, time to plan, track, and optimize. That is not reality for most working men. And the data supports this. Large-scale nutrition studies consistently show that diet adherence matters more than the specific diet chosen. In other words, the best diet is not the one with the perfect macronutrient ratio. It is the one a person can follow long-term. A major review published in the Journal of the American Medical Association compared low-carb, low-fat, and balanced diets and found that weight loss outcomes were similar after 12 months when calories were controlled. The biggest predictor of success was not the diet type. It was consistency. This matters because most nutrition advice prioritizes optimization over sustainability. Working men don't fail because they lack discipline. They fail because the plan collapses under fatigue. Another reason modern nutrition advice fails is that it often ignores energy demands. Men doing physical labor or long hours burn significantly more calories than sedentary individuals. Research shows that physically active jobs can increase daily energy expenditure by 500 to over 1,000 calories per day, depending on intensity. Yet much popular advice pushes aggressive calorie restriction. Chronic undereating leads to predictable outcomes: reduced energy, poor concentration, slower recovery, increased injury risk. Studies on low energy availability show that prolonged calorie deficits can disrupt hormones, sleep quality, and mood, even without extreme dieting. This is why many working men feel run down while eating clean. They are underfueled. A forged mind understands that food is not just about body composition, it is about performance. Another major failure point is the way nutrition advice treats hunger. Many plans normalize constant hunger as discipline. But research in appetite regulation shows that chronic hunger increases cortisol, reduces impulse control, and leads to binge behavior later. This is not a character flaw. It is biology. When hunger hormones like ghrelin remain elevated for long periods, decision-making worsens, willpower weakens, plans that require constant restraint fail not because men are weak, but because the plan is fighting physiology. A forged mind works with the body, not against it. Another issue is the constant swing between extremes. Nutrition culture cycles through villains. First fat, then carbs, then calories, then everything again. This creates confusion and paralysis. But when researchers look at long-term health outcomes, they find something consistent. Balanced diets that include adequate protein, whole foods, and sufficient calories outperform extreme approaches over time. No extreme diet has shown superior long-term adherence or outcomes in large population studies. That matters. Working men do not need extreme solutions. They need reliable ones. There is also a psychological failure built into most advice. Food is framed as moral. Good foods, bad foods, cheat meals, guilt. This creates a reward and punishment relationship with eating. Research in behavioral psychology shows that moralizing food increases stress and leads to disordered eating patterns over time. A forged mind removes morality from fuel. Food is functional. Fuel is not a reward. Fuel is not punishment. Fuel is maintenance. This shift alone reduces mental load and decision fatigue. Finally, most nutrition advice ignores fatigue. Fatigue is not a temporary inconvenience. For working men, Fatigue is a constant condition. Studies on decision fatigue show that self-control declines as the day goes on. This affects food choices directly. Plans that require high decision-making at the end of the day fail. A forged mind plans for this reality. It builds simple defaults. Repeatable meals. Low-friction choices. Not variety for entertainment. Consistency for function. The goal of eating properly is not perfection. It is sustainability. It is having enough energy to work well, recover, think clearly, and stay capable over decades. In the next section, we'll break down what your body actually needs to function well, using clear science, real numbers, and practical guidance that fits working life. Stay steady. Section 2. What your body actually needs to function well. Nutrition becomes much simpler when you strip it down to function. Your body does not need trends. It does not need extremes. It does not need constant adjustment. It needs a few fundamentals, supplied consistently. From a physiological standpoint, the human body has 4 primary nutritional needs for daily function: energy, protein, micronutrients, and hydration. When any of these are missing or inconsistent, performance drops. This is not opinion. This is basic biology. Let's start with energy. Energy comes from calories. That word has been overcomplicated and moralized, but at its core, a calorie is simply a unit of fuel. Studies from the National Institutes of Health show that adult men typically require 2,200 to 3,000 calories per day, depending on body size and activity level. Men performing physical labor or long shifts often fall at the higher end, or beyond it. When energy intake drops below energy output for extended periods, the body adapts by slowing processes that are not immediately necessary for survival. This includes reduced muscle recovery, lower testosterone production, increased fatigue, slower reaction time. Research on low energy availability shows that prolonged underfueling increases injury risk and decreases work capacity. This matters for working men. Eating properly is not about eating less. It's about eating enough to function. Next is protein. Protein is not just for muscle growth. Protein is required for muscle repair, hormone production, immune function, enzyme creation. The current research consensus suggests that physically active men benefit from 0.6 to 0.8 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass per day. For most working men, this lands somewhere between 100 and 180 grams per day, depending on size and workload. Higher protein intake has also been shown to improve satiety. Studies show that meals higher in protein reduce hunger and spontaneous overeating later in the day. This is why protein is a foundation, not because it's trendy, but because it stabilizes energy and appetite. Then there are carbohydrates. Carbohydrates are often misunderstood. Carbs are not inherently fattening. They are the body's preferred fuel source for physical work and high-intensity activity. Muscle glycogen, stored carbohydrate, is what allows sustained effort. Research shows that low glycogen levels lead to early fatigue, poor performance, and impaired concentration. For working men, especially those doing physical labor, carbohydrates are not optional. They are fuel. The key is quality and timing, not elimination. Whole food sources, rice, potatoes, oats, fruit, provide usable energy without excessive processing. Next is dietary fat. Fat is essential for hormone production, brain function, and joint health. Extremely low-fat diets have been shown to reduce testosterone levels in men. Research published in the Journal of Steroid Biochemistry found that men consuming very low-fat diets had significantly lower testosterone compared to those consuming moderate fat intake. This matters for strength, mood, and recovery. Eating properly includes adequate fat, not excess, not avoidance. Then there are micronutrients. Vitamins and minerals support everything from oxygen transport to nerve function. Iron, magnesium, zinc, and B vitamins are particularly important for men doing physical work. Deficiencies in these nutrients are associated with fatigue, weakness, and poor recovery. Highly restrictive diets increase the risk of micronutrient deficiencies. Whole foods reduce that risk. Finally, hydration. Even mild dehydration, as little as 2% body weight loss, has been shown to reduce physical performance and cognitive function. For men working long shifts, sweating, or working outdoors, hydration is a performance issue. Water supports, temperature regulation, joint lubrication, nutrient transport, mental clarity, fatigue is often worsened by dehydration. A forged mind does not ignore basics. It handles fundamentals first. This is where inspiration meets discipline. Eating properly is not about control. It's about respect for your body's requirements. When you fuel yourself correctly, energy stabilizes, recovery improves, mood steadies, discipline becomes easier. You are not indulging yourself by eating enough. You are maintaining your equipment. In the next section, we'll focus specifically on protein, fullness, and energy stability, and how proper intake prevents overeating, crashes, and late-day discipline failure. Stay steady. Section 3. Protein, energy, and staying full. One of the biggest reasons working men struggle with eating properly is not lack of discipline. It's hunger. Unmanaged hunger erodes focus, patience, and decision-making. This is not a personal weakness. It is biology. From a scientific standpoint, protein plays a central role in appetite control and energy stability. Multiple studies have shown that protein is the most satiating macronutrient, meaning it reduces hunger more effectively than carbohydrates or fat. Research published in the American Journal of Clinical Nutrition found that higher protein meals significantly reduce levels of ghrelin, the hormone responsible for stimulating hunger, while increasing peptide YY, a hormone associated with fullness. This matters because hunger hormones directly affect behavior. When ghrelin stays elevated, cravings increase, impulse control drops, late-day overeating becomes more likely. For working men, this usually shows up after long shifts. Energy crashes, unplanned snacking, large late-night meals, not because of poor character, because the body is trying to correct an energy deficit. Protein helps prevent this cycle. As discussed earlier, research suggests physically active men benefit from roughly 0.6 to 0.8 grams of protein per pound of lean body mass per day. But distribution matters just as much as total intake. Studies on protein distribution show that spreading protein intake across meals improves satiety and muscle repair compared to consuming most protein in one sitting. This means protein should not be saved only for dinner. For working men, skipping protein early in the day often leads to uncontrolled hunger later. A forged mind plans protein intake strategically, not obsessively, strategically. Including 25 to 40 grams of protein per meal has been shown to meaningfully improve fullness and reduce overall calorie intake later in the day. This is not bodybuilding advice. It's appetite management. Protein also stabilizes blood sugar. Meals very high in refined carbohydrates without protein cause rapid spikes and drops in blood glucose. These fluctuations contribute to fatigue, irritability, and cravings. Adding protein slows digestion and smooths energy release. This improves focus, physical endurance, emotional regulation. For working men, this directly affects job performance and patience at home. Another overlooked benefit of adequate protein intake is recovery. Physical work creates muscle breakdown. Without sufficient protein, recovery slows. Research shows inadequate protein intake increases muscle soreness, injury risk, and cumulative fatigue. Over time, this reduces work capacity. Eating properly is not about appearance. It's about staying capable. Another important concept is protein density. Not all foods deliver protein efficiently. Highly processed foods often contain calories without sufficient protein. Whole food sources, meat, eggs, dairy, beans, fish, deliver protein alongside micronutrients. This improves nutritional efficiency. A forged mind chooses foods that do more with less decision-making. There is also a psychological benefit to protein-rich meals. Studies show higher protein diets improve dietary adherence. People feel more satisfied and less deprived. This is critical. Plans that leave you hungry will not survive long-term. Protein supports discipline by reducing internal resistance. Finally, staying full is not about eating until stuffed. It's about preventing extreme hunger. Extreme hunger leads to extreme choices. A forged mind avoids extremes. It fuels early. It fuels consistently. It prevents crashes before they happen. Eating protein regularly is not indulgence. It is preparation. Preparation allows discipline to operate quietly instead of being forced. In the next section, we'll focus on eating for long shifts and physical work, including timing, meal structure, and how to fuel without slowing yourself down. Stay steady. Section 4. Eating for long shifts and physical work. Eating properly for long shifts is not about eating more food. It's about eating the right food at the right times to maintain energy, focus, and physical output. Most problems working men experience with food during long shifts come down to poor timing and poor composition, not lack of effort. From a physiological standpoint, physical work relies heavily on muscle glycogen, which is the stored form of carbohydrates in your muscles. Research in exercise physiology shows that when glycogen levels drop too low, fatigue increases rapidly, strength output declines, and reaction time slows. This can happen even if total calories for the day are technically enough. For men working long or physically demanding shifts, this means one thing. Skipping meals early and trying to catch up later does not work. It creates energy crashes. Studies on shift workers show that irregular meal timing is associated with higher fatigue, poorer concentration, and increased injury risk. The body performs best when fuel is supplied before energy is depleted. A forged mind fuels ahead of demand, not reactively. This starts with the first meal of the day. Research shows that consuming a balanced meal containing protein and carbohydrates within a few hours of waking improves physical endurance and cognitive performance throughout the day. For working men, this does not mean a large or heavy meal. It means a functional meal. Protein for satiety and muscle protection. Carbohydrates for usable energy. Moderate fat for sustained fuel. Skipping this meal increases reliance on stimulants like caffeine and sugar later, which creates energy volatility. Caffeine masks fatigue. Food corrects it. Another key principle for long shifts is meal spacing. Studies on blood glucose regulation show that long gaps between meals increase cortisol and impair glucose control, especially during physical activity. This means going 6, 8, or 10 hours without food while working hard is not disciplined. It's counterproductive. A forged mind uses simple, repeatable fueling windows, not constant eating, but planned intake. For example, Smaller meals or snacks containing protein and carbohydrates every 3 to 5 hours help maintain energy without causing sluggishness. This improves strength output, mental clarity, mood stability. Another important factor is digestion. Heavy, high-fat meals, slow gastric emptying. This can cause sluggishness, discomfort, and reduced work output. Research shows that meals very high in fat take longer to digest and can reduce perceived energy during physical activity. This does not mean fat should be eliminated. It means timing matters. Higher fat meals are better suited for evening meals, post-work recovery, times when performance demand is lower. During work hours, simpler foods digest better and fuel faster. Carbohydrates are especially important here. Glucose is the brain's primary fuel source. Studies show that low blood glucose impairs concentration, decision-making, and reaction time. For men operating machinery, driving, or working in hazardous environments, this is a safety issue. Eating properly is not just about health. It's about reducing risk. Hydration also plays a critical role during long shifts. Research shows that dehydration as mild as 1 to 2% of body weight reduces physical performance and increases perceived effort. In practical terms, this means work feels harder than it should. For men sweating throughout the day, replacing fluids consistently matters more than drinking large amounts all at once. A forged mind treats hydration as part of the job. Finally, long shifts increase the temptation to rely on convenience foods. Highly processed foods are often calorie-dense but nutrient-poor. They spike energy briefly and then crash it. This creates a cycle of highs and lows. A forged mind plans ahead with default options, not gourmet meals, reliable fuel. When food choices are simplified, discipline becomes easier. Eating properly during long shifts is not about restriction. It's about preparation. When you fuel correctly, you work better. When you work better, fatigue decreases. When fatigue decreases, discipline holds. In the next section, we'll talk about grocery store rules that simplify everything. How to choose food quickly, affordably, and without overthinking. Stay steady. Section 5. Grocery store rules that simplify everything. Most nutrition problems do not start in the kitchen. They start in the grocery store. When food choices are complicated, discipline breaks down later. A forged mind simplifies decisions at the source. This is not about perfect shopping. It's about removing friction. From a behavioral science standpoint, people are far more likely to eat what is available and convenient than what is ideal. Studies in nutrition behavior consistently show that food availability in the home is one of the strongest predictors of diet quality. In simple terms, you eat what you buy. This means grocery shopping is not a passive task. It is a strategic one. A forged mind treats the grocery store like a system, not a test of willpower. One of the most reliable findings in nutrition research is that diets higher in minimally processed foods are associated with better health outcomes, including lower rates of obesity, cardiovascular disease, and metabolic disorders. Highly processed foods tend to be calorie-dense, low in protein, easy to overeat. This is not because they are evil. It is because they are engineered for convenience and palatability. Ultra-processed foods often combine refined carbohydrates, fats, and salt in ways that override normal appetite signals. Research shows that people consuming diets high in ultra-processed foods eat hundreds more calories per day on average than those eating mostly whole foods, even when allowed to eat freely. A forged mind doesn't try to fight this with discipline alone. It reduces exposure. This starts with simple grocery rules. First, Prioritize protein sources. Protein anchors meals and stabilizes appetite. At the store, this means consistently buying a few reliable protein staples: meat, eggs, fish, dairy, beans, or legumes. You do not need variety for discipline to work. You need reliability. Studies show that consistent access to protein improves satiety and reduces impulsive eating later in the day. Second, choose carbohydrates that fuel rather than spike. Whole food carbohydrate sources, rice, potatoes, oats, fruit, provide energy without extreme blood sugar swings. Highly refined carbohydrates digest rapidly and contribute to energy crashes. This matters for working men who need sustained output. Research on glycemic control shows that pairing carbohydrates with protein slows digestion and improves energy stability. This is why simple meals work. Third, include fats intentionally, not accidentally. Dietary fat is essential for hormone production and joint health, but it is easy to overconsume. Highly processed foods often hide large amounts of fat without providing satiety. Whole food fat sources, olive oil, nuts, eggs, fatty fish, deliver fat alongside nutrients. A forged mind includes fat deliberately, not passively. Fourth, keep meals simple. Research in behavioral nutrition shows that people adhere better to diets with fewer rules and simpler food choices. Complex meal plans fail under stress. Simple meals repeat well. Repetition is not boredom, it is efficiency. Working men do not need constant novelty. They need fuel they can rely on. Another important grocery principle is planning for fatigue. Decision fatigue is real. Studies show that as the day goes on, people are more likely to choose calorie-dense, low-nutrient foods. A forged mind anticipates this. It buys foods that are easy to prepare when energy is low. Not perfect foods, functional foods. This might mean pre-cooked options, frozen vegetables, or simple combinations. Convenience is not weakness. Unplanned convenience is. Finally, grocery shopping should support consistency, not extremes. Crash diets often require specialty items that are hard to maintain. When those foods disappear, so does the diet. A forged mind builds habits around foods that are easy to find, affordable, and repeatable. Eating properly does not require constant thought. It requires good defaults. When defaults are solid, discipline becomes quiet. In the next section, we'll talk about avoiding extremes and burnout dieting, and why moderation is not weakness, but long-term strength. Stay steady. Section 6. Avoiding extremes and burnout dieting. Most working men don't fail at eating properly because they lack discipline. They fail because they push too hard, too fast, for too long. Extreme dieting feels productive at first. Cutting large amounts of food, eliminating entire food groups, forcing constant restraint. In the short term, this often works. In the long term, it almost always fails. The science is clear on this. Large calorie deficits increase fatigue, irritability, and hunger hormones. Studies show that aggressive restriction raises levels of ghrelin, the hormone that drives appetite, while lowering leptin, the hormone that signals fullness. This hormonal shift makes continued restriction harder over time. It's not a mental issue. It's a physiological response. This is why many men experience a cycle of strict eating followed by loss of control. The body pushes back. Research on weight regain consistently shows that the majority of people who lose weight through extreme restriction regain it, often within 1 to 3 years. This is not because they lack willpower. It's because the method was unsustainable. A forged mind learns from this. It does not chase rapid results. It prioritizes methods that can be maintained under fatigue. Another consequence of extreme dieting is reduced performance. Studies on low energy availability show that prolonged underfueling leads to decreased strength, slower reaction time, poor concentration, increased injury risk. For working men, these are not cosmetic issues. They affect safety and income. Eating too little does not make you disciplined. It makes you less capable. A forged mind understands that discipline should improve performance, not undermine it. Another common extreme is total food restriction followed by cheat periods. This creates a reward and punishment cycle. Behavioral research shows that labeling foods as forbidden increases desire and binge behavior. When restraint finally breaks, overeating is more likely. This cycle is mentally exhausting. It also damages consistency. A forged mind removes this cycle. Food is not a reward. Food is fuel. Eating properly means eating consistently, not perfectly. There is also an emotional cost to extremes. Extreme diets require constant decision-making and self-control. Studies on decision fatigue show that self-control weakens over the course of the day. The more rules you must enforce, the sooner discipline collapses. Simple systems last longer than strict ones. This is why moderate, repeatable eating patterns outperform extreme approaches over time. A forged mind chooses rules that survive tired days, not rules that only work when motivation is high. Another issue with extreme dieting is nutrient deficiency. Highly restrictive plans increase the risk of missing key vitamins and minerals, including iron, magnesium, zinc, and B vitamins, all critical for energy, muscle function, and cognitive performance. Deficiencies contribute to fatigue and mood instability. Eating a wider range of whole foods reduces this risk. Moderation supports health. Extremes undermine it. This does not mean eating without structure. It means setting reasonable boundaries. Enough protein, enough calories, consistent meals, simple food choices. These standards protect long-term discipline. A forged mind also understands that food habits must survive seasons of stress. Work pressure, family obligations, lack of sleep. If eating properly requires constant vigilance, it will eventually fail. Sustainable eating looks boring from the outside, but boring works. Eating properly is not about control. It is about endurance. It is about staying capable year after year. Extreme approaches promise fast change. Sustainable approaches deliver lasting strength. A forged mind chooses the path that lasts. In the next section, we'll talk about consistency over perfection with food and how small, steady habits outperform short bursts of intensity every time. Stay steady. Section 7. Consistency over perfection. With food. Most men believe they fail at eating properly because they are not strict enough. In reality, most men fail because they expect perfection. Perfection creates pressure. Pressure creates fatigue. Fatigue breaks consistency. The science on behavior change is very clear here. Long-term success in nutrition is driven by habit consistency, not perfect adherence. Large studies on dietary behavior show that people who maintain steady, repeatable eating patterns, even imperfect ones, achieve better long-term health outcomes than those who cycle between strict control and complete abandonment. This is why on-again, off-again eating is so common. Perfection is fragile. Consistency is resilient. A forged mind understands this difference. From a physiological standpoint, the body responds to patterns, not isolated days. One high-calorie meal does not undo progress. One imperfect day does not reset your health. Research on metabolism shows that energy balance is regulated over time, not moment to moment. What you eat across weeks and months matters far more than what you eat on a single day. This matters for working men. If you miss a meal, eat off plan, grab convenience food, nothing is ruined. What ruins progress is letting one deviation become a reason to quit. A forged mind does not overreact. It returns to baseline. Another reason consistency matters more than perfection is psychological. Studies in behavioral psychology show that people who frame setbacks as failures are more likely to abandon their goals entirely. This is known as the "what the hell" effect. One mistake becomes an excuse for more mistakes. A forged mind rejects this framing. Food choices are not moral events. They are inputs. Some inputs are better than others, but none require punishment. This mindset preserves momentum. Consistency also stabilizes appetite. The body adapts to regular intake. Research shows that irregular eating patterns increase hunger variability and cravings, while consistent meal timing improves appetite regulation. When meals are predictable, hunger becomes predictable. Predictable hunger is easier to manage. This reduces late-day overeating and emotional eating. Another important factor is stress. Working men operate under constant pressure. Stress hormones like cortisol influence appetite and food preference. High stress increases desire for calorie-dense, highly palatable foods. Perfectionist eating plans collapse under stress because they require constant restraint. Consistent plans survive stress because they are forgiving. A forged mind plans for imperfect days. It builds eating habits that can absorb disruption without breaking. This might mean default meals, simple food combinations, repeatable routines, not exciting, effective. Consistency also reinforces identity. When you eat properly most of the time, you begin to see yourself as someone who takes care of his body. That identity makes future decisions easier. You are not forcing behavior. You are reinforcing who you are. This is how discipline becomes quieter. Not through willpower, through repetition. Another practical benefit of consistency is reduced decision fatigue. When meals are familiar, there is less mental negotiation. Studies show that reducing daily decisions improves adherence across many behaviors. A forged mind limits options on purpose. Fewer choices. Clear defaults. Less friction. This conserves energy for work, family, and responsibility. Perfection demands constant attention. Consistency frees attention. Finally, consistency supports longevity. Eating properly is not about looking a certain way for a short period. It is about remaining capable over decades. Joint health, energy, recovery, mental clarity. These are built slowly. A forged mind measures success in years, not weeks. If you can eat well enough most days, without stress, without extremes, you are doing it right. Progress that lasts is quiet. In the final section, we'll pull everything together and frame eating properly as an act of self-respect, not obsession, because how you fuel yourself reflects how seriously you take your role and responsibilities. Stay steady. Section 8. Eating as self-respect, not obsession. Eating properly is not about control, it's about respect. Respect for your body's limits. Respect for your responsibilities. Respect for the long game. Most men approach food emotionally. They eat to cope. They eat to reward themselves. They eat to punish themselves. This creates instability. Science shows that emotional eating is closely linked to stress, sleep deprivation, and irregular meal patterns. When cortisol remains elevated, common in working men under pressure, cravings increase, impulse control drops, and food choices become reactive. This is not a failure of discipline. It's a mismatch between biology and structure. A forged mind does not moralize food. It removes emotion from the process. Food becomes maintenance, just like sleep, just like hydration, just like vehicle upkeep. You don't obsess over maintaining equipment. You take care of it because neglect has consequences. The science supports this approach. Long-term health outcomes, cardiovascular health, metabolic stability, injury risk, are strongly influenced by consistent nutrition over decades, not short-term dieting efforts. Large population studies show that steady dietary patterns are associated with lower rates of chronic disease, better cognitive function with age, and improved physical capacity later in life. This matters because eating properly is not just about how you feel today. It's about whether you can still work, think clearly, and move well years from now. A forged mind keeps that horizon in view. Another critical piece of self-respect is honesty. Eating properly means acknowledging reality. You work long hours. You get tired. You don't have unlimited time. Plans that ignore this are disrespectful to your life. Science consistently shows that plans aligned with a person's environment and constraints have higher adherence rates. When nutrition fits life, it lasts. A forged mind chooses alignment over idealism. Self-respect also means consistency without obsession. Research on mental health and nutrition shows that overly rigid eating patterns are associated with higher stress and lower quality of life. Food should support life, not dominate it. Eating properly should make your days easier, not harder. When food choices are simple and repeatable, mental space opens up. You think clearer, you react better, you recover faster. This is discipline functioning correctly. Not loud, not extreme, quiet and reliable. Another overlooked aspect of self-respect is role modeling. Whether you realize it or not, others observe how you take care of yourself, your family, your children, your co-workers. Consistent self-care signals responsibility. It shows that you take your role seriously, that you plan for longevity, that you do not run yourself into the ground for short-term output. This is not selfish. It is sustainable. Finally, eating properly reinforces identity. When you consistently fuel yourself well, you see yourself as someone who maintains standards. That identity strengthens discipline across other areas. Work improves, recovery improves, patience improves. This is how small habits compound, not through intensity, through repetition. If you take one idea from this guide, let it be this. Eating properly is not about restriction. It is about preparation. You fuel yourself so you can show up, at work, at home, and for the long haul. That is self-respect in action. This is forged mind. Stay steady.